Hey folks, Future Lennon here. I just wanted to throw in a quick disclaimer at the start of this video just to say that this was recorded back in 2022, so there might be a few times where I point out whether this game still holds up in 2022 or not, but rest assured the same still holds true today in 2025. I somehow managed to unearth this recording, which I'm super happy with, so I really wanted to share it with you guys today. So with that being said, if you enjoy this video and you'd like to see more of this type of content, I'll leave a link to both our dedicated gaming channel and our gaming podcast in the description and comments below.
Look to my coming at first light on the fifth day. At dawn, look to the east.
Altair.
So it was sometime just after Christmas and I was going through all of my old Xbox One games and I rediscovered Assassin's Creed Origins. I remember thinking this game was really cool back in the day, but I never got around to finishing it. So I installed it and booted it up and it ended up consuming about a week or two of my life. After finishing the story and roaming around Egypt, cleaning up some side quests, I made the exceptionally wise decision to buy the latest entry in the series, which at this point is Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Do you think it is a serious wound?
You have an axe in your head.
I'll save my thoughts for that bloated behemoth for another video, but anyway, playing these games sent me down this Ubisoft rabbit hole. I've completed most of the entries in the series at this point, and to look at what's been churned out in recent years, I've personally found to be pretty disappointing to say the least. That being said though, I do see a lot of elements in all of the titles that I'm really fond of. However, I guess I'm just not feeling as excited about the new direction of the franchise. But starting to weigh up these elements, it actually got me asking myself, am I just looking at the older Assassin's Creed games through rose-tinted glasses? Are the older Assassin's Creed games just genuinely better? And will I ever actually get around to forcing myself to play through Assassin's Creed Syndicate? These are just a few of the many burning questions on my mind, and with this series, I hope to answer at least some of them. Now, obviously I decided the best place to start this whole investigation is with the first Assassin's Creed game. Note anything down that stuck out to me and make this video that you're watching now. I'm in no way deconstructing this game or going to be intentionally critiquing it. I'm just literally going to be casually providing my thoughts on this entry and gradually making my way, game by game, to the latest Assassin's Creed. And once I eventually have covered all the games, I'll probably end up giving my whole overall perspective on the series. Just a final thing to add, I'm not going to go out of my way to look up anything online in regards to the backstory or info. I just want to take what information is being presented to me and piece together the narratives as I go and see if it all makes sense. Like, I do remember key moments from other games, but I just thought it'd be a more interesting perspective to take while revisiting these games for the series. So because of this, I can almost guarantee that I'll miss a few elements here and there, but again, these are just my thoughts on some of the things that stuck out to me. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's just dive straight into my thoughts on the first Assassin's Creed game. Now, there's three main takeaways I've had with this game. And let's face it, this is pretty much going to be the same for all the other games as well. The historical story, so for this one it's Altair. The modern day story being Desmond's, and just a couple of the gameplay mechanics. Now, I'm sure most, if not all of you watching have played this game by this point, but I'll provide just a bit of a general overview. So our main protagonist, Desmond Miles, finds himself at the mercy of large pharmaceutical company Abstergo, personally being overseen by Warren Vidic, who was also assisted by Lucy. They're trying to access Desmond's ancestors. That's really hard to say. Desmond's ancestors' memories through his DNA, all thanks to the technology of the Animus. Abstergo is sifting through his genetic memories specifically to uncover information about the Pieces of Eden and their locations, and they believe that Altair, an assassin during the Third Crusade, discovered this information at some point during his life. Now, this game was actually pretty fucking mind-blowing when it first came out. I think I was like 12 at the time and thought, there is no way that you can climb anywhere and everywhere. But it also kind of sounded like a Prince of Persia game to me, just like on steroids, which sounds pretty awesome, I'm not gonna lie. Unfortunately, my only exposure to the Assassin's Creed games for a while was just from what I saw on like gaming magazines or what my friends were telling me of it when we'd walk home from school. Now, my mum couldn't really afford to get me an Xbox 360 until I think I was about grade 11, so I didn't get to experience the game for myself until the time Assassin's Creed Brotherhood came out. So this actually kind of spoiled my experience though, because I started playing the series with Assassin's Creed 2, because I heard it was so much better than the first. And when I finally got around to playing AC1, I just found it so hard trying to take that step back, and it was a bit of a downgrade with the gameplay quality. So because of all of this, and look, to be honest, I was just really fucking lazy, I ended up throwing in the towel around the 4th or 5th Templar in AC1 and just YouTube the rest of the game. So for making this video, this is actually the first time I've actually completed the game for myself. And look, considering it's a product of its time and the first in its series, I was surprisingly impressed with this game and the overall concept of Assassins versus Templars throughout the past and present, using DNA and technology to access the memories of our ancestors, but also the ideas of dispelling what really did or didn't happen throughout history, like how some of the stories in the Bible are basically just bullshit and illusions, just from the use of the control of the pieces of Eden. I will say, I think Assassin's Creed 2 set up the whole modern day or mystery box idea a little better when it came to creating intrigue and speculation around the pieces of Eden, but I do think despite the fact that this game can be about as subtle as a sledgehammer sometimes with its writing, its story was really ahead of its time. So focusing on Altair for a little bit, our first interaction with him is in some kind of cave or shaft in Jerusalem. Altair and his co-workers have to retrieve some treasure for their boss, basically, but the plan goes tits up because Altair can't stop being an alpha male and it's his way or the highway, baby. So he returns to Masyaf, the home of the assassins, to report back to the leader of the order, Al-Mulim. And I'm just going to tell you guys now, I think I'm going to struggle to say that name throughout this video, so I'm just going to call him Al for the most part. So Altair is copying a massive verbal berating from Al, but to make things worse, our boy Malik comes back with a little scratch on his arm and the treasure from the failed mission, and the Templars are on their way right now to Masyaf. This game does not fuck around with getting right into the action, and it's just so comically extra and cheesy at times. Like, I love how the Templar army just brings out a hostage, and rather than using the hostage as leverage or for bargaining, they just straight up fucking kill this guy immediately. Like, what was the point in doing that? So anyway, I don't know, I just thought I'd point that out. But you'll play throughout this invasion section and fend off the Templar army, and it's a great way to show you how to use the controls. It's nearly like the game could have just kept the tutorials to the opening in Jerusalem and the siege section, rather than making you sit through a really long Animus tutorial and unavoidable combat trainer.
It seems my students do not fully understand what it is to wield a blade.
Seriously, for real, hearing this line like 1,000 times has fueled my nightmares. So after all is said and done, you head back to the Assassin HQ, only for Al to publicly fake kill you.
What?
Like, what's the point in this? It's so deliciously extra. Like, he pretends to kill you as a punishment in front of your fellow assassins, and then you wake up later and Al's like, yeah, nah, actually, I do think I need you for some jobs, hey. And then you just run around Masyaf and other cities and no one gives a fuck that you're still alive. Like, was it explained if this was meant to be like an illusion or something from like the Apple? Or am I just crazy here? I don't know. Also, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, just focusing on what Al-Mulim is saying here for a sec. When Altair broke all 3 tenets, one of them is to never compromise the Brotherhood, right? Now, I know this isn't directly what he's meaning by that, but it really got me thinking about the whole dynamic of this village in Masyaf. Like, everyone there is out in the open and training as assassins and living amongst this village, right? Like, is the whole village made up entirely of assassins and their families? Or is it more just like a couple of people from the village end up training to be assassins and the rest are just doing their own thing? Like, either way, this would just make the whole Assassin's Order location like the worst fucking kept secret amongst the Holy Lands. Because there's no way that word of mouth wouldn't get around. Like, these guys are in a massive castle amongst this village. And this village would require food and resources, right? Like, surely people are traveling and trading with other communities, so people would clearly know about the assassins in Masyaf. To me, this seems pretty detrimental for an organization that wants to be a secret, a blade in the crowd, if you will. Nah, actually, I just remembered that there's literally wooden fencing and rubble on the roads outside Masyaf, blocking people's way in and out. So there's probably no way that this secret of this group of parkour pals is going to be leaving the town anytime soon. Regardless, right, like, at least the other cities' assassins... The other bureaus had the right idea by having inconspicuous buildings where the only way in or out is through the roof. Which, by the way, you can't tell me that Al-Mulim's stunt double here is going to be able to jump out of this roof anytime soon. But anyway, let's put some distance between my meltdown and this game for a sec and get back on track with the story. So the boss man Al here tells us that we need to hunt down 9 targets that will help to bring an end to the crusade. These targets are in Acre, Damascus, and Jerusalem, and conveniently, each city has 3 districts: poor, middle, and rich. So basically, one big bad per district. Now, I'll cover the mission and district structure a little bit later, but as far as the story goes, I feel like this is the point in the game where we really start to see the game's repetitive storytelling and pacing. So Altair basically kills the main target, reports to the boss, gains a rank like it's a karate belt, which to me just seems like an extra health slot and a new move anyway. Then he goes to the next city, rinse and repeat. So occasionally Lucy will take us out of the Animus to take a break, and here you can try and find out more about your circumstances. But again, I'll cover that a little bit later when I'm talking about the modern day story. So like I said earlier, the game's narrative can be about as subtle as a sledgehammer and really cheesy. And that couldn't be more obvious than it is here with the game's writing and dialogue. It's actually really hilarious hearing how Altair talks to his fellow assassins at the start of the game. Like, he's a complete asshole, but they also talk to him like he's a piece of shit too, and I kinda love it. The first few interactions are basically like, "Ooh, a little birdie told me you were coming. Yep, are you here to kill so-and-so? Obviously, mate, just give me the information that you have on them and I'll go get it done." Like, it's so funny how these Bureau assassins just sass Altair for being a dick. Even the Templar targets throw in little jabs here and there, and I don't know, I just think it's great. But what I did like is that even though this story and writing is a bit paper thin, it's really nice to see the other assassins start to warm to Altair and even comment on how he's changed and grown as a person. Like, at one point he even shows the initiative by apologizing to Malik, which I'm not gonna lie, that actually surprised me as well while playing through this game. Anyway, as Altair progresses through his mission of killing the 9 targets, he engages in the classic and iconic death dialogues, and that's where he gets some nugget-sized pieces of information from his victims in their final moments. For the most part, it's objectively obvious that these individual Templars were committing evil deeds, but some of them genuinely believe that what they were doing was right. Kind of like a necessary evil for the greater good, to create total order, and this starts to play on Altair's mind, and I think the game did a really good job at conveying that. I will say though, that this game does try and at least make these 9 targets' personalities quite unique. Like, it's hilarious how mustache twirling some of these guys are. So for example, this first Templar target you kill in Damascus just fucking shanks this poor dude like 20 times in front of absolutely everyone. And no one gives a shit. Like, he starts yelling at them afterwards as if he was in charge of them or owned them. Also, I don't know why this stood out to me, but dude, is your fucking horse okay?
Disgusting!
So one more notable moment from the 9 targets is actually when you try and kill the last one, who you think is Robert. But plot twist, it's a woman. Honestly, it's really cool that Altair shows her mercy because technically she wasn't one of the targets. And let's face it guys, our boy Altair isn't usually the one to think twice about straight up doming people when he doesn't need to. I'm looking at you, interrogation missions. But anyway, generally all the interactions with the 9 targets are great. And after he learns of Robert's whereabouts, Altair goes to tell Malik, who apparently just left his arm behind a Masyaf now, that the target was not only a decoy, but worse, a woman. No, but seriously, Malik did not seem to take that news well at all. So this is actually a part in the story that I'm a little bit conflicted by, because it does work out in the end for Altair and Malik, but this whole story is of Altair being humbled, right? Then learning to respect others and their decisions, to follow the rules of the creed and so on. But then he does a complete 180 when Malik urges Altair to go straight to Al-Malim to sort things out. But then Altair goes, yeah, nah, my way's better, and it's my way or highway, baby. And anyway, he tells Malik to start asking the Jerusalem folk about the Templar treasure. So story-wise at this point, I feel like there's not much else to say about Altair's hero's journey, besides the fact that he travels to the enemy camp and fucks up so many people along the way, like it's insane. Then he has to engage in a duel with Robert, which leads to you finding out that the bad guy is actually our boss, Al. Oh yeah, and then the guy who owns the absolutely fucked horse lets you leave. Now, once Altair returns to Masyaf, it's so damn eerie, and the color grading is really dull and grey now, which I think is super effective at showing something's not quite right. The town and its assassins are clearly being controlled by something, which leads to you fighting your way up to the headquarters, and you find that Malik's posse has returned to Masyaf to lend a hand. Now, I have no idea how Malik and his boys aren't under the influence of the apple right now. Like, is it an Isu DNA thing to be able to mentally resist this control? I don't know, man. But moving on, Altair makes his way back to the assassin's castle to confront his former master. This part is really creepy, by the way. There's like this massive crowd of zombie-like people who are being mind-controlled and just standing at the entrance looking at you and blocking the way. The atmosphere of this whole sequence is done so well. So Altair makes his way past everyone and meets with Al-Mualim. And after a bit of a chat and a wrestle in the gardens, Altair successfully defeats him. Altair is adamant that he's going to destroy the apple, only to then see a projection of the globe which would be absolutely blowing his 12th century mind right now, and this sways him against destroying the piece of Eden. And one thing I did want to touch on here with this sequence, and I'm really just nitpicking at this point, but why is Papa Al here freezing our boy in place for a deep and meaningful, only to unfreeze him for a fight? Like, he's zipping around the place, and I'll give them old man credit, like it's pretty impressive, but he just opens himself up to getting fatality'd by Altair here. Also, a bit of a tangent here, but Lucy explains to Desmond that everyone is speaking in a modern way, and in English, so that way he can understand what's going on around him. Kind of like a live translating feed, which I think is a really cool and creative workaround to make the games more accessible to the broader audience. This being said though, literally everyone in the Animus is speaking in English but in their respective accents. Except I guess they decided, yeah, nah, let's not worry about Altair, we'll just do an American accent and no one will notice. Which honestly, I really don't care all that much, but all of a sudden, Altair assassinates Al-Mualim and then he just says this line in what I'm assuming is Arabic, and it absolutely fucking blindsided me. Like, I'm pretty sure it's his only Arabic line, and if anyone knows what he said, please just let me know in the comments, because unfortunately Ubisoft did not have the foresight to add subtitles in this game. Like, I spend more time than I care to admit trying to find the subtitles option. Like, this game even has an option for if you want blood or not, which I'm assuming is a feature that would be a lot more sophisticated than just putting some subtitles in your game. But look, anyway, that's the gist of Altair's story. We've all played the game by now. I know I've only touched on some of the main points, but let's move on to the modern day section. As I said earlier, Desmond finds himself at the mercy of Vidic and Lucy, who are trying to access his memories to find the location of the piece of Eden, which we just saw before with Altair's memory of the projection of the world, with points of interest covering the globe, which are the other locations of the pieces of Eden. Now, I can't remember if Abstergo is just trying to find one piece or all of them, but either way, it's a mission success for them, let's face it. Now, it's actually funny, I think this is the only time you get to see Vidic's boss. I can't remember him from the other games, but Alan Rickon, you would completely miss seeing him if you don't know to change the camera angles. And by the way, I don't know why, you can't change my mind on this one though, but this guy totally looks like Wilson Fisk to me. Like, I can't see him any other way. I don't know, moving on from that one. Now, rather than touching on all the story beats and features in the modern day, I'm just going to go through some of the highlights from here. Like, first of all, the devil's in the detail. It may not be as subtle, but for those who don't know who Abstergo really is yet, I really like that the doors have crosses designed on them. It's like a little foreshadowing as to who they really are. What can I say? It's a nice touch. Then there's a few things that Ubisoft didn't really seem to give a shit about when it came to design. Now, I think we all know this by now, but it's got to be said, guys. Lucy's finger. It's bloody attached, guys. For literally the whole game, both inside and out, if my memory serves me right. I'm pretty sure Altair is like the only person missing a finger. And then there's this random point where you start talking to Lucy in the game and then she shows you her hand. And just like my dad did when I was 3, her finger disappears. And then the cutscene ends, only for her finger to come right back. Now, I know this is fixed in the next game, but I'm pretty sure in the next game they show that the assassins don't need to have their finger removed. But look, anyway. The other thing that I noticed in the Abstergo facility is that there are cameras like everywhere, which is fair enough, but that being said, there's a few moments where you're either getting woken up by Vidic or you're laying down and there's like a camera angle from the roof looking down at you, hopping into the Animus. But if you actually look around where these security cameras are meant to be, based on the angles of the shot, they're literally nowhere to be found.
Anyway,
I do think that this is as good a time as any to introduce a hot new segment. It's conspiracy time. So fucking stupid. But anyway, will this segment be reoccurring? Who knows, but I'm going to ask the questions that have probably been answered over 10 years ago on Reddit already. As for the first conspiracy,
Number 1.
there's this one scene where Desmond's cupboard has been opened up and he's like, what the fuck, who's been in my room? And that got me thinking when I first saw it. I was like, was this meant to be Vidic? But then I think I remembered that it said somewhere in the Ezio games that Subject 16 was the one who wrote all the symbols on the walls at some point, like in his blood or something. So is it implied that Subject 16 is the culprit here? I couldn't remember if Subject 16 is floating around at this point or if his body is like fried as shit and he's in that Animus Island thing. Again, it's been a while since I played these games, so I'll just put together the pieces as I work through them. But more importantly,
Number 2.
the only conspiracy that matters. Who is fucking with the towers in Desmond's room? Like, seriously. At first I thought I was going crazy, right? And I thought I was imagining the towers being moved off and on the rack in between breaks from the Animus. But after a few visits to my room, I actually noticed that it was happening every time. Now, you can try and tell me that it's just the game implying that Desmond has been showering and using the bathroom. And to that, I would usually say that that's a pretty sensible and logical assumption. But I personally think that it's just a load of porcupines and Desmond doesn't actually need to eat or poop or change his clothes because canonically in this game he hasn't done any of those things, and thus he has transcended his basic essential need to bathe himself, which in turn means that someone is using his shower when we're not in the Animus. So I'll leave it up to you guys to let me know what you think of that conspiracy in the comments, but I think I'm onto something here and I'm going to track down the person who's trying to fuck with my towels. Anyway, that's the segment done. I don't know, I just noticed these two things and I don't know, if I see anything weird in the future games then I might do it again, who knows. But anyway, moving on. I think the game fleshes out Desmond's character really well considering we only spend a small amount of time with him. He's restricted to the modern day scenes in a sterile environment where he interacts with Lucy and Vidic and gradually finds a way to access the Abstergo computers and try to learn more about what's happening around him. Now, he's shown to be fairly intelligent and empathetic when trying to learn more about Lucy and her reasons for working at Abstergo, but he also shows a lot of humanity with how scared he is with the looming threat of being disposed of as soon as Abstergo no longer has any use for him. And to be honest, I actually felt a lot more of a connection with Desmond in this game than I did with Altair. So an example of his complexity as a character is when he's verbally sparring with Lucy. Desmond is questioning why Abstergo was trying to do this Animus work with him when it's pretty clear that it isn't for any drug or pharmaceutical purposes. And it's usually a lot of moments like this between our two characters where it catches Lucy off guard and then she tries to urge Desmond to move on, or she'll let him in and kind of give him a couple of breadcrumbs, or she just urges him to get some rest. Either way, I think it adds layers of nuance that I appreciate in the game, and I don't know, I just thought it was really cool. Outside of these conversations, you can snoop around the Abstergo environment, and it starts off with you literally looking through Lucy's emails while Lucy is right fucking next to you. But later on, you got to do some snooping once Lucy or Vidic leave. But man, this email plot. Now, there's two main topics that stood out to me. The first one is of Lucy's friend Layla and her mysterious death in September 2007. Now, this made me feel so fucking dumb because I had this moment where I was like, holy shit. Ubisoft is playing like 4D chess with all of us here and introducing Layla from the new modern day story all the way back here in the first game. But then I realized I was just an idiot and these emails were literally discussing how Layla died like 5 years before this game. But anyway, both Layla's names are spelt differently anyway, but that's neither here or there. The other email thread though is about Lucy asking her assassin friends to come to the building and rescue herself and Desmond. And this is just hilarious to me, by the way, because I've never worked at an office job where the company couldn't just access any incoming or outgoing emails. Like, this is not very secretive and assassin-like if you ask me, Lucy. But then it also leads to Vidic going full mustache twirling villain mode and playing the live audio to us of the assassins trying to break their way into the building and getting absolutely bodied by what may as well be the Abstergo SWAT team. It's insane. But look, besides this, there's nothing much more that I have to beat on with the modern day portion of the game. Like, obviously it's really cool how at the end you have this bleeding effect from the Animus and you can see all of the cool conspiracy and famous iconography written across the whole environment. But I will say that the ending of this game overall is pretty anticlimactic compared to the next game. Like, it just kind of fades to black once Desmond notices the wall. But anyway, that's pretty much my thoughts on the modern day section of this game. But man, we still got to talk about this gameplay here, and needless to say, playing this game really made me appreciate the improvements to the climbing and the combat in the later games, because boy, this was rough. And to give credit where it's due, this is the first time I think I've ever seen or experienced video game world building design where you can literally just walk up to any surface and just start climbing it. Ubisoft definitely hit their stride in the later series where the movement felt more smooth and assumptive, when climbing certain directions. Like in this game, if you so dared to point your thumbstick in any angle slightly off of where you're trying to go, Altair will basically just leap in the complete opposite direction, or it doesn't register to climb even though there's clearly a ridge to climb on. But as to a couple of things that do work really well, like as a series staple, and I'm pretty sure that this is a standard design in all the games, but there's the whole pigeon and hay or bird's nest on the edge of a ledge, and I think it's really clever. It's a subtle and natural indicator that it's safe to jump off the ledge, and while you're sprinting across the rooftops, running away from guards, this design really helps to keep the flow of free running. And I will say I didn't realize how much I actually missed the whole right trigger and either A or X depending on what console you're playing on, but this could also just be because this is the era of the AC games that I grew up with. I don't know, it just feels natural. Touching on music for a little bit actually, the music in this game is super classic. Like, the sound you make when you complete an objective or find a flag is just so nostalgic to me. And like I said earlier, I didn't actually really play this game all that much, actually until I started this video. Also found that in some cutscenes, the music is just so obnoxiously loud. Like, what the fuck is this guy saying? And also, what the fuck is wrong with your horse? Also, speaking of cutscenes, this whole glitch system that Ubisoft was trying to put into this game, and I'm glad that it's not in any of the new games, I hope. Like, it sucks. Like, I think it was Ubisoft's way of trying to keep the player engaged in the cutscenes, or they thought it was meant to make it more cinematic, but it just ends up being so distracting because you're not really paying too much attention to what people are saying, and you're just focusing on when this glitch is going to pop up. But another thing that I noticed is that sometimes in combat, when you're running away from people, does anyone actually know what the purpose of the glitch when in combat is? Because it confused me every time I saw it. You'll probably notice that I haven't even touched on the kingdom in this video at all yet, and it's because it is just the most boring section in the game. You pretty much only need to use the kingdom like at the start of the game when you have to go to the other 3 cities, and basically right at the end when you have to go to Robert's camp. Basically, once you've traveled to a city for the first time, you can just fast travel there for future missions, so you don't even need to navigate through the kingdom. And I feel like it's just a big open area where you have to go to some viewpoints, kill some Templars, collect some flags, and let's face it, in this game, there is way too many collectibles, and there is no way that I'm going to be doing that, especially if I'm just playing this game to do a video on it. Also, I know I talked a little bit about design in the modern day story, but in regards to the design in the Middle Ages setting, I think it's really cool that the color grading is very noticeably different for each city. It gives them a different contrast, but also makes them feel a little bit unique. I do find that most of the buildings are pretty much identical. Like, there isn't really that much variation in building design, but I've noticed for the most part that in each district of each city, there's usually like one main attraction, or maybe the word attraction isn't right, but you know, a unique monument or building that kind of sets it apart. Say for example, I believe it's the middle district in Akka, where it's basically just a bunch of docks. That design is legitimately terrifying because I didn't realize it, but Altair can't swim. And you're jumping from boat to boat, and it's genuinely terrifying because there's either Templar enemies just roaming around the place and they'll just attack you on sight, or there's going to be one of 2 of the most annoying NPC characters. Like, I'm talking just like the general citizen NPCs. The first one are the beggars. Like, it's just these ladies who just run up to you and try and just like ask you for money or whatever, and it's just really annoying. But the second one, and these are the guys who are like roaming around the docks, are the drunks, right? They're basically running around. They look like they're cracked out of their mind, and if you get a little bit too close to them, they'll just push you out of the way. And they can really fuck you up for certain missions, like the assassination missions, which I'll also cover in a second. Anyway, the level design here was really cool, but I did find it unnecessarily frustrating. Now, I will say that this game does start off fairly easy, but you really do notice the difficulty ramp towards the last section of the game, but I don't think it's in a good way. I think when other games implement more of a challenge by increasing how much damage you take or implementing new NPCs or enemies, it usually feels more rewarding when you take those enemies out or traverse those challenges, where I find in this game, the only real difference is sometimes the counterattacks might not work as effectively, or you try and just attack people and they either block or they like push you away or whatever a little bit more consistently. Like, you'll actually see that the outfits and the apparel of the enemies actually change throughout the game, and that'll pretty much indicate how challenging they are. Or like I described before with that mission layout, how there's like those drunk guys in the docks and they just push you, or they push you around when you're trying to be relatively rapidly incognito in a mission. It does increase the difficulty, yes, but it makes it more annoying and frustrating rather than challenging. Now, I'll quickly talk about missions a little bit actually, because I've been mentioning them a little bit, but I haven't actually gone through what missions there are in this game. There's interrogations, eavesdropping, pickpocketing, informer missions, and saving citizens. Now with eavesdropping and pickpocketing, they are generally the easiest missions to do as there's no combat involved. With intimidation, there's usually a guy who's like preaching to a crowd or he's guarded or whatever, and you walk up to him and basically to initiate the mission you beat him up and you kind of threaten them and you're like, oh look, tell me what you know or I'll kill you. Then they end up telling you what they know and then you kill them anyway. Like, it's so crazy and kind of sinister if you ask me. And then saving the citizens, there's usually just like a couple of Templars just pushing someone around and then you kill them. The man or lady that you rescue, they end up pointing out that there's either going to be like new citizens who are going to help you. Like if you're being pursued, they'll kind of like block the road, or some of them might be priests and they'll be hiding spots. And I really like this because it actually has an effect or a positive effect in each district. So you don't necessarily need to go out of your way to do them, but I've just noticed that they do have a positive impact on the gameplay. But man, I would say that the Informer missions are the worst. Now, these can be a bit of a mixed bag because I did complete one where I was racing to collect 20 flags within like 2 or 3 minutes. But every other mission that I played besides that one, I found to be assassinating a specific target walking around a nearby area. Now, I know that assassinating is literally the name of the game, but the mission can be fucked up so easily, and it's worse when the one mission can sometimes span up to, I believe, 5 targets max. Let me explain. While you try to assassinate your target, if you do anything deemed socially unacceptable at all, which by the way I think is a pretty neat feature, all the Templars will just chase you and the mission will fail instantly, go to hide, get out of combat, and then go back to the informant and start all over again. Now, if you're on this mission and you accidentally bump into someone, and this is what I was saying earlier about either the beggars or the drunks, like if they push you into someone, that'll just start the crowd and you'll get spotted and it's a mission failure. Or even if you just slightly run in front of a patrolling officer, you pretty much just lose. This is kind of what I'm talking about, how the difficulty just isn't fun. It just ends up pissing you off. And this mission, I've noticed, actually becomes more and more common towards the end of the game. And I found that I had to actually resort to completing these missions more when I was trying to finish the end game. Also, this is completely stupid and irrelevant, but I've noticed that the saving symbol kind of looks like a bank card chip. Like, I don't know why, but hey, technology, am I right? So before I give my final thoughts on this game or just a general overview, I do just want to quickly say, I think the prayer feature is really neat. Like, I know that they've mapped a whole button to basically you press A or X and you just like pray, and it makes you a lot more inconspicuous. Again, this kind of adds to the whole what is socially acceptable or unacceptable at the time in regards to your physical behavior, and I think it's just really cool. I guess really quickly just touching on NPC behavior, I thought it was just so funny. There's these 2 moments that really stick out in my mind. There was this moment where I was climbing in a building in Massif and one of the NPCs is like, what is he doing? And I'm literally here thinking like, do you realize like what fucking town do you live in? Like, this is literally the capital city for parkour pals here. Like, we're all climbing buildings and jumping off of them, mate. And the other NPC moment here, like, I think it's so incredibly goofy. You can get close enough to a target and they just turn and look at you and stop everything that they're doing. Then all you need to do is take a few steps back to commence the mission. Like, there was this one scenario where I jumped off the edge of a building right into a bale of hay, which was right next to a pickpocket mission. But even though I was 100% hidden in incognito, the 2 NPCs just stopped their whole conversation and looked into the cold abyss of the hay bale. Like, NPCs can detect when I'm too close to start a mission, but they don't realize that I'm literally on their ass trying to pickpocket them and visibly have my arm out to pinch some goodies. Like, the NPC behavior is just super inconsistent, but again, it is the first AC game. And as a random side note, I also just love how people who get pickpocketed always notice that you've pickpocketed them the second you do it. Like, every time without fail, you'll succeed with the pickpocket, and then if you just stand there and look at them, they'll always just be like, ah, mamma mia! And then literally the next moment, they're just like, ah, all right. Anyway, I don't know, it's so stupid. Ragdoll death animation is also great. I've noticed that happens a lot. Like, you'll either just get fucking launched or you'll just jump off of a building. 9 times out of 10, it'll be a complete accident, but you'll jump off of a building, splat into the ground, you just roll around ragdoll, or It's just hilarious. Also, when it comes to the whole incognito wanted system in this game, I can understand what Ubisoft was going for, but I do think it's kind of annoying that you can't just like leave your hidden spot until you're fully incognito again. I don't know, it's just so stupid. Anyway, I think the very last thing I'll touch on just with this game, again, it's a bit of a design choice, but I feel like this game, and this does get improved on in later games, but this game especially kind of feels like the city and just the obstacle design and layout is purely just there so that way you can climb up a building or you can leap over an obstacle. Like, it doesn't feel like it would be realistically tangible in real life, like, you know, with how many hay bales there are or whatever. Like, it feels classic video gamey in a way. I think what really made that stand out to me, I poked a bit of fun at it earlier, was how like when you're leaving Masyaf, there's just fencing or obstacles just on the road and you're just like, how does anyone actually come in and out? Like, I understand that people can walk around it, but what about like people with carts or horses or just trading? Like, it doesn't really make sense, and it's kind of nitpicking, but it's really noticeable in this game specifically. Like, I know that when I was playing Valhalla and Origins, the design was a lot more seamless. Like, I couldn't just easily poke holes at, I guess, the environment because it looked a lot more like natural or tangible to me. So moving on to my final thoughts of this game. To sum it up, I think it's a good game, but I'm going to come at you guys with a bit of an unpopular opinion here about Altair and just this game as a whole, right? So I kind of look at Altair a little bit like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, because everyone kind of puts him up on a pedestal just because he was the first one, right? They're so similar. Like, they've legitimately got like the same level of charisma and likability. And I don't exactly find either of them to be all that interesting. But that being said, they're both really solid starting points for their respective series. And I guess another parallel that Altair has to Tobey's Spider-Man is that they both get much needed character development and well-deserved send-offs in a future protagonist installments. So for example, while Tobey was portraying the established awkward and wooden Peter Parker in No Way Home, he also got a few moments where he shows how much he's matured and grown up since we last saw him in Spider-Man 3. And I feel like we got the same treatment for Altair, as the game Revelations shows the trials he faced and the lessons he's learned after the events of the first game. Also, speaking of which, I don't know how I haven't brought this up yet, but literally, does this game feature Abbas at all, except for this one scene at the start of the game where he's just poking at Altair? Like, what was the point of having him in this game at all? It just doesn't make sense. Like, am I missing something from the game, or is there a mission that I skipped? But I don't know. Anyway, I genuinely like that this game tried to traverse this whole weird and, I guess, conspiracy element. Like, with its marketing, it kind of just looked like this normal platforming, running around Prince of Persia game, like I said before. But with its story, it's just so much more, and I'm excited to get to the next couple of games because they actually really expand on the whole modern day story and the people who came before. It's really, really intriguing stuff. I'm not going to give like an official rating or anything like that with this series, with these games, but I will say that if you're a newcomer to the Assassin's Creed games, would I recommend this game? No, I actually wouldn't. I like it as a fan and I appreciate it as a fan, but if this was the first entry I was going to be playing, I'd actually be looking at the other games first. I know that's kind of like what I did, and I've already explained that I had a hard time getting into this game again, but there's a reason for that. The game is clunky as all hell. You die a lot purely because the controls are kind of against you here when you either accidentally leap off of a building or you're trying to block an attack and the controller's just not registering it. I do think it sets up a really cool story, and if I was to tell you to play this game back in 2007 or 2008 when it first came out, obviously I'd say yes. Back then, this game was revolutionary, but right now, I just think in 2022 that this game is really good if you just want to know a little bit more about the story and see where the series actually started. Anyway, I had a blast playing this game because I guess I played it from a different perspective because I wanted to actually write down any notes that I have for this game. It actually ended up being something like 21 or 22 pages, which is fucking crazy. And I wanted to actually try and make a video like this for the first time and I guess just see what you guys think of it. I've enjoyed the process and it's been something completely different for me, and obviously if you guys like this, I'd really greatly appreciate it if you subscribe. You'll be able to see the future videos in the series. Obviously next up I'm going to be covering Assassin's Creed 2, but until then, I hope you've enjoyed this episode.